straight edge movement has drawn legions of mostly boys to its anti-drug and alcohol message. But to understand where it's headed, you have to look at where it came from. In the 1950s, post-war migration to the suburbs created comfortable middle-class communities whose values were conservative, stable, and square. Rebellion was almost inevitable. In the 1960s, a counterculture youth rejected their parents' values both politically and recreationally. It became an era of experimentation, especially with drugs. And you were either part of the revolution or you weren't.
Drag it, man. Try anything once. Shake this square world and blast off for Kicksville.
But the party would take its toll, and soon some kids wanted to try something else. In the 1980s, straight edge emerged as an appealing fusion of self-control and in-your-face protest. Yet it began by accident, from a single lyric by the band Minor Threat in 1981. The song, a declaration of an individual choice, lasted 45 seconds, but generations to follow would take it and make it their own.
Straight edge really did emerge from one song that set out the values of straight edge, but it wasn't ever intended to be a movement. It must have tapped into something that was going on in our culture at the time, but it's contradictory in the sense that these kids are rebelling by living out what every middle-class parent's dreams are, in a sense, for their children.
Inadvertently, a movement had begun, giving rise to a subculture. And almost inevitably, a militant arm emerged, in part because of the man behind this mask.
We are a group of artists, ups, punk rockers, skaters, hardcore kids fighting back. We are your children raised on Ritalin and Prozac, biting the hand that's reared us. Life is tough, so get tougher, otherwise it's gonna chew you up and spit you out, and that's always kind of been my mentality.
His name, Elgin James, and in the early 90s, his stomping ground was Boston, Massachusetts. Elgin became straight edge at 13, rebelling against his adoptive parents, who were 60s activists and pot smokers. By 17, he had run away and was living homeless in Boston. Straight edge kept him off drugs, but it also became a means of survival.
So lived right here, right on that second story up there. No heat, no hot water, no electricity. So this pretty much is where it all began. There used to be, crack dealers on this street, and that's when we started hatching the plan of, how we were gonna survive.
The plan was simple: steal what he needed from the criminals who dealt drugs in his front yard.
I wasn't gonna victimize anyone innocent. My plan was to victimize the victimizers, which is how we started robbing drug dealers.
It was the perfect straight-edge crime, buoyed by a kind of Robin Hood spirit. The money went to Elgin and his crew, and then to charities and straight-edge bands. It was a violent means to an end.
Yeah, my parents had marched with Martin Luther King, so they're pacifists. I got turned on to Huey P. Newton, Stokely Carmichael, and Malcolm X. But every kind of movement does have to have a violent side, because you realize pacifism usually doesn't work.
In the decentralized, unofficial world of straight edge, Elgin and his friend John Buckley began building a more well-defined crew, one that went far beyond the goals and choices of kids who called themselves positive. They gave this new harder edge its own name, FSU.
FSU stands for Friends Stand United, Forever Stand United, but it originally started as It Up.
I wanted to be involved in a straight edge that had balls to it, which is hard as nails. It wasn't posy. It wasn't about community in the sense of like live and let live. It was, you're an army.
This new straight edge army moved in on Boston's youth battleground, Lansdowne Street, where Elgin and John worked as bouncers at a club, and drugs, alcohol, and wild partying was the norm.
So this is where we came to do the cleaning up. Basically, we were the ones that kept the sons and daughters safe, keeping the drugs out of the clubs.
For For straight-edge vigilantes, they were in the perfect position, beating up drunk kids and punishing the drug pushers.
That's where many, a drug dealer coming in, chances are he's going to come on our radar all of a sudden, like, okay, that guy's got something up. We're going to follow that guy into the bathroom. We're going to smash his face into the porcelain toilet bowl. We're going to empty out the drugs out of his pockets and flush them, and then we're going to take his big roll of cash. And then that's probably going to the last time you're going to see the guy.